Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to our question and answer session. My plan is for today is to just kind of go through my program. If you have any questions along the way, feel free to type them in and I will get to them at some point. You may find that your question is answered uh, just naturally throughout the presentation. Um, Before we start, just real briefly, if any, this is also being done for several clubs at one time, so all over the state of California. So with that in mind, if any of you are in the fire area, I hope that that you're doing well, staying safe, and that type of thing. So let's move on with the show, so to speak. Of course, it would help if I pressed a button that makes everything move forward. There we go. So, what are the American Advertising Awards? That's the big question for those of you who have never participated. Um, Why am I having trouble moving forward on this? I should not. There you go. It's the creative spirit of advertising. There are three rounds of judging in this competition. Starts out in a local competition in the city that you're in. From there, it moves on to one of 15 district competitions, and winners from that then move on to the national finals. And final, this is the only place where you can win an Addy Award. So, what makes this competition different than the other competitions out there? Number one, we are local, but number two, we are also national. In order to win a national award, you got to start out locally, beat the people in your local competition. From there, go to district, beat those people there, and then move on to the nationals. And we are uniquely American, so we're not awarding folks from other countries. That is to say, though, if you have created some advertising that is shown in other countries, you could enter that here. So if it was created in another country, then you have to enter it there. But if you created it here in America, um, then you can enter it here. So let me give you a little bit of example to be clear when I say it was created here. Say you're an agency um, in San Francisco and you do all the creative work, you get things together, but you go to Japan and you shoot your commercial in Japan and you supervise folks in Japan that help you do this. That's fine. You can enter it here because you're an American agency and you're the people who created the ad, even though you created it over there, if that makes sense. If you have any questions about that, feel free to ask me. And along the way, also, in case I don't mention it later, we do accept entries in all languages. So obviously, there's a lot of advertising created in this area that's in Spanish, but also in Chinese, Vietnamese. There's all sorts of different languages that are used by ad agencies and those who create advertising where we live. You could enter it in any language that you created in. Whether or not it was meant to be shown here in the United States, or if you created it to be shown in a different country, that's fine. You created it, you're here, you could enter it here. The only thing we request is that if it is in a different language, that you provide translation. Uh, if it's a TV ad, we request that you either have subtitles or provide a separate translation. Just that way, the judges could be good to go with what it is you present. So the American Advertising Awards has over 200 professional categories. That's an awful lot, and over 50 student categories. Obviously, there's two different combination competitions that are being run together, but yet separately. So if you're a student, you look there. It's basically the student categories are an abbreviation of the professional categories. If you're unsure of which category to enter, at the end of this presentation, you'll have some information of who you could contact in the city that you're in. All the cities that are participating, I have all their information here, so you could be sure to know that that you can get your question answered, such as which category should I enter? I'm confused. Should it be this one or that one, or whatever it might be? So look for that. So the rules and categories slightly change every year. For to make sure you have the correct rules and categories, be sure and download the current rules and for updates, and that'll be on your club website. And again, we'll have a link for that at the other end of the presentation. So be sure don't use the old rules. You may have category numbers that have slightly changed. We may have added one or two categories, taken away one or two categories. Every once in a while, there's a major overhaul. This year, there's not a major overhaul, just some minor little things here and there. So be sure to look for the correct rules. So there's three levels of the competition. It's all going to be judged online this year, pretty much ever since COVID. Everything's been judged online, not in person. Um, and because of that, they've included more places for uploading pictures and videos. For a multiple page document that you're planning on entering, upload a PDF of all the pages. So in the past, we may have just asked for a cover because we asked you to submit the entire publication that the judges could then look through. But now they can't look through it unless you actually upload a PDF of all the pages of whatever it is. There are some categories that you're allowed to upload a video if it makes most sense. For example, if you have a direct mail piece and uh, it's three-dimensional, it opens up, there's things that comes from a box that something pops, whatever it might be. Um, that is better shown with a video than with a picture. So you might want to take a pic, do a video of maybe if it's an invitation, how the invitation opens up if it's something special, or what it is that's better viewed that way. So one of the questions I often get asked is, what's the best way to enter something? And my generic answer is, you should decide what presents it best. And if you think it's presented best with a picture, enter a picture. If you think it's presented best with a video, enter a video. So I look for you guys to decide how best it should be presented. As long as it's presented within the rules, you can make those decisions yourself. I don't want to tell you, you know, specifically some of these specifics because it may not be the best for you without judging it. Um, excuse me. So that if you have, again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. So the professional categories are in a bunch of divisions. I'm not going to read all of these, but you can see in white are all the divisions that are there, and then they have categories that are there in the gold. And even within that, sometimes you have, multiple categories. You might have, packaging flat, packaging three-dimensional, point of purchase. There are several categories. There may be things that are campaigns. But you could see here the type of things that there are. Here we got more print, out of home, all these kinds of things. And if you look, and if you download the categories and rules, there will be definitions of all of these different categories. So you could actually look there to make sure you're understanding the definition. Oh, I found a typo on this page. I won't tell you. But if you're good, you'll find it. Um, the So download the rules and look at them, and they should give you the complete explanation of all these different things. What makes things different? What makes, a TV commercial local as opposed to regional and national? Why might you enter as a TV commercial as opposed to a web video, as opposed to a trailer or a cinema ad? So, I mean, there's all sorts of these different things, to look at. So be sure and look at it. Now, let me tell you my general philosophy as a person who runs a lot of these competitions, um, which is if you enter it in the wrong category, you won't be disqualified. We'll just move it to the correct category. So don't overly panic this thing. However, if you have a question about which category to enter, then go ahead and ask it. It's better if you could put it in the correct category at the beginning. Sometimes I catch it and I'll move the category. Sometimes the judges will catch it and the judges will say, "Hey, this is the wrong category," in which case I'll just move it. And if that's the case, don't be surprised if you win in a category that you didn't enter in. We especially have that issue with the student entries. They sometimes notorious for entering in the wrong categories. So it's possible you might enter in one category and win in a different category if we determine it belongs in a different category. So here's some more. Now, elements of advertising are very interesting because these are not necessarily full advertisement, but these are the elements that make up advertising, such as the photography, the illustration, the logos, music, sound design, voiceover, cinema, animation, that kind of thing. And you could enter a piece, for example, that in several categories. For example, if you have a uh, we'll just say a magazine ad. And as part of this magazine ad, you have photography and you have illustration and you have a logo. Well, you could enter the magazine ad all on its own, and then you could also enter the photography that was in the magazine ad and the illustration that was in the magazine and the logo. And so you could enter these several categories. And plus, this magazine ad might have been part of a cross-platform integrated campaign, in which case this magazine ad might be paired with a radio ad, a TV ad, a website, social media content, whatever it might be that created a larger campaign. And so you could enter it there as well as part of the larger campaign. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that later, but you could see how that works. Then down on the bottom, you see local only. Each club has the authority to have local only advertising, and that could be in one of two ways. One is it could be, for example, a category that is not represented anywhere else here in here, like printing. Maybe it's a printing category for whatever reason it might be. In which case, that will not move up to the district or national competition. So local only means is you just have the chance to win a local award, but not move up to the district and national competition. On the other hand, the other local only categories there might be is, for example, within the television categories, you might have a local club could decide, we have some really large companies here, some really small ones, and so we want to divide that up where TV commercials created for under $5,000 as an example, or over $10,000 or over $250,000, or separated out, by price. Those would be local only categories, but the difference with those when it's divided out from um, a regular category is at that point, if it moves to the district competition, your local TV ad that was produced for under $5,000 will just roll up into the regular TV ad because not every club would have had all those breakouts. And so it'll just roll up to a regular television commercial at that point, and that's what you would win if you won at the district or the national level. I'm hoping this is all making sense. If I'm not, give me a question and we'll get to it at the end. Um, Student categories, there's fewer of them, but basically the same general philosophy. And with the student categories, keep in mind that that these could be things that were created for a class. These could be entries that were created specifically for this competition. They could be any entries a student does where they did not get paid for it. So if you're a student and you're in college, and while you're in college, you might take up a client or two because you're learning things, they like it, you're cheap, whatever the reason might be. Someone hires you, you become an expert in social media and they want someone in college to run their social media program. So so for whatever reason you might get a job. If you as a student create something for a client, you then have to enter it in the professional categories. You cannot enter it in the student categories. Um, so it is possible as a student, if you created something for one of your classes that you wanted to enter, you could do that in the student categories, and then at the same time, enter the work that you did as a professional in the professional categories. Keep in mind, though, when you do that, you're going to be paying the professional prices in the professional categories, the student prices in the student categories. And so that is how that works. Again, if you have questions, let us know. The only exception to that rule, by the way, is if you did something for a student newspaper, a student radio station, a student TV station, and there was some payment involved in that in a student publication, then you could enter it in the student categories. If you're part of the NSAC team, which is the National Student Advertising Competition, which is different than the American Advertising Awards, so you'll know if you participated there. So don't worry about it if you don't know, because if you don't know, that means you didn't. So, but if you entered something for that in that competition, you cannot enter this year's NSAC materials in this year's student competition with the Addies. So you would have to enter last year's stuff in this year's competition. That is how that works. Again, if you have any questions, let us know. So these are the websites and the different places that I'm talking to today. So if you want to get more information, we're not done here, but I'm just saying, if you want more information about each of the competitions, download rules that might be more local to the competition, go to each of these places, and you'll find what it is that you need. And you'll also find contact information, which I'll give you in a moment anyways. But that's the place where you should go to. Excuse me, I'll take a drink. So when you enter, there'll be a link at each of those websites. You go there, you find the link that says, here's the link to enter. And then you'll get here, so it'll be specific towards that club. Here's Los Angeles as an example from a few years ago. So you'll get, if you're from San Francisco, you'll go directly to the San Francisco page. If you're in Las Vegas, you go to Las Vegas page, etc. Get here, fill out information about your organization, more information about you. This information is actually really important to be accurate because there's oftentimes we need to get a hold of you, ask you a question. We're a little confused about your entry. Maybe you did something wrong. Maybe we wanted you to fix something. So that's where we'll go with that. Then you go in here and select a proper category. It's done through a series of drop-down menus. And you work for it that way. Put in your entry title. Now, I ask you, this is my personal request. It has nothing to do with anything that's legal, but it makes my job a lot easier to correct awards. Where it says entry title, don't put the client information and don't use quotation marks. Because when I create the awards, I do it on a mail merge. And it's just much easier with that. So plus, if you have the client information where you see below, there's no need to put it in the entry title because it's already there, and then it comes out duplicated. But it's important to have an entry title that you know that says what it is and go from there. No, don't stress so much about it says select method of distribution. A lot of people stress over that. Don't stress over it. Just select direct mail, TV, radio. It's basically however the advertising got distributed. That's what that is. But don't stress for that. Language is important just so we know and we're prepared for dealing with a language other than English. Then you're going to go to the place and do media uploads. You're going to upload your entry, your video. It says, do you have internet or interactive entries to be judged? If you select yes there, then you'll get options to put in the website addresses of where your entries are. So now let me address that for a second. So say you have a website that you want to enter and you created it last year and then you put it in and the website's the same today, fine. You just put it in. But say what happens, you created a website last year and it changed this year. You can go ahead and put that website at any other location that you want and just direct it to us. The same thing with, for example, if you have like a website takeover that was for a period of time, or you have banner ads, or you have anything along those kinds of lines, you could actually create, if you want, a staging page where then the judges could go and have the names of the different entries that you have that were online entries, and that way they could just go press on each one when it's time where they find it. It makes it helpful if you have your category number in there. You'll notice at the top there is a category number up there in blue, uh, 357-181-15 LAS. That's a little code, and that those entry numbers follow you from the local to the national competition. But anyways, if you refer to that with each entry and you give kind of a one page for that, then you can do that as well. However you want to do it is fine. Okay, let's move on. The online media accounts. This is the number of entries you have in each one. It does say physical media accounts there. It's the old thing. We no longer do things physically, but you enter how much of each one you have. This is especially important if you have a campaign entry. So here you have the credits. It's really important that you have the credits in here, the name and the title of the people. You do not have to put credits. If you do not put credits, there will be no credits on your awards. Different clubs put credits on their awards, different ones do not. But if you want them credited, if they are used, this is where you put them. And please be very, very careful on your spelling, because a lot of people make spelling mistakes. A lot of people forget to put someone who is supposed to be in there, so be as careful as you can to get those credits correct. It's easier to change them now once the judging is over and the awards are starting to be created. It makes things a lot more difficult if you don't have them correct. So for preparing your entries, um, there's no changes in online interactive film, television, sound, elements of advertising. All entries are uploaded in the online system. And all other categories, which we talked about before, PDF or JPEG uploads, available for print categories, videos if you like, and again, multi-page documents, upload PDFs on all pages. So here are some musts and must not. You must enter by the deadline and pay the entry fees. You must provide translations for non-English entries. You must not deliver entries because it's all done online for those of you who've done it the other way in the past. You must not provide too many executions. Let's talk about this for a second. Excuse me. Excuse the cough. I'm getting over a cold here. Lingering cough. So, too many executions. There's two kind of campaigns. There is a single category campaign, and then there's the cross-promotional campaign. The single category campaigns are things like illustration, photography, posters, um, newspaper ads, uh, radio ads, that kind of thing. When you have a single category like that, you could provide as many as 4 executions. Okay. You could do as little as 2, as much as 4. No, you cannot do 5. No, you cannot do 6. So, say, for example, you want to enter all 6 of your radio ads as part of a campaign. Your choices are as follows. You could enter 2 different campaigns, one with 2, one with 4. You could enter 2 different campaigns at 3 and 3. Or you could just choose your favorite 4 um, and enter them. So you may not have more than 4 executions on those single category campaigns. 4 posters, that's it. Now, the second kind of campaign is the cross-promotion campaign. And that might be a campaign that includes a radio ad, a TV ad, maybe a poster, a billboard. There might be, items like I've had like those beer tabs where you can go to a bar and they have those things. They've entered those. I've seen coasters entered, magnets entered, all sorts of things like that. So whatever's part of this thing that you have this cross-platform campaign, you could enter as many as 10 executions. Okay, 10. So now let me clarify on that. Say as part of your thing, you did 25 refrigerator magnets, as an example. No, those 25 refrigerator magnets are not 1 execution. And no, those 12 coasters are not one execution. Each one of those coasters is an execution. So pick your best 10 across your radio, your TV, your newspaper, these specialty items, whatever it is, and please provide just 10. Um, because if you provide more than 10, I could tell you what might happen. I don't tell you it will happen. I'm telling you it might happen. Someone like me might go in there and say, this is just way too many. I'll just cut it out the ones I don't like. And you don't want me to do that. You want to do that. So, um, or I might contact you and I say, here, redo your entry and make it correct. So try if you can to just go ahead and get the correct number of things in there. And again, you can also do two cross-platform things and separate them into two. So you have then 20 separated into two campaigns. So that's an option as well. You must not identify the entrant. That's you. Do not identify your company name, your name. We don't want to know who did it. The only difference is if it's a self-promotion campaign. So if you did an advertising industry self-promotion, you did a Christmas card that you sent out to all your clients. Obviously, your Christmas card is going to have your company name on it. No way to avoid that. Um, but and if you're the entrant, you have an in-house marketing agency and you work for, XY stores, obviously XY stores will be identified. But if you do that, we don't know who created the ads. We don't know if XY store created the ad themselves. We don't know if an ad agency created that. And the reason that we don't want to identify you as the entrant is that we try and make this competition um, as fair as possible. And if the judge, and we pick judges from out of the area, there will not be any judge in your local market. They'll be from elsewhere in the country or the state. So they do not have any association with any of the entrants. So two things could happen. Number one, if they know who your agency is, they may have a preconceived notion of liking your agency or hating your state agency. And we don't want to take that risk. We don't want them to know which agency in case they have a preconceived notion. The second reason is if they know the agency that did these things and they saw something you did earlier in the judging and they really liked that, it might influence their opinion about this current one. Similarly, if they really disliked the one that you did earlier in the competition, it might impact their opinion of what they're judging now. So we don't really want to identify you at all. It makes the competition fair, not only for you, but for all the other entrants. Now, I don't know if people do this so much anymore because I don't do this like I used to, but don't provide slate, bars, tones, and radio commercials. We don't want to hear the guy say some category number that whatever it is that they provided to the radio station. Don't want any of those things. We just want the audio, the video, whatever it is, just to start. Okay. Again, if there's any questions, be sure to go ahead and ask. How to win more awards. So, and please read the disclaimer at the top. Nothing in this presentation is meant to imply that if you enter more pieces, you will automatically win more awards. We don't do that. And the judges don't know how many awards each person entered it anyways. But if you enter more work that is worthy of winning awards, you are more likely to win more than if you don't like. So generally speaking, if a judge, I've seen this over and over, I've been doing this judging in multiple areas for a long time. Generally speaking, generally, not completely, if a judge likes one piece of work for a client that's done a certain kind of way, that's part of the campaign, chances are they'll like all of them. Similarly, that if they really don't like it, they won't like all of them. That's as a general rule. However, I can tell you, I've actually seen in judging when we do the in-person judging, judges say something like, you know what, in this format vertically, it works really well for this and this and this reason. But when you turned it, horizontally for a billboard, it doesn't quite work as well for this and this. And so they may give you different scores based on that. When I entered the competition, which was a long time ago, I did really well with a whole bunch of posters I entered, except for one of them because one of the judges, I broke their pet peeve on whatever it is that the judge hated that I did. And so it's not 100%, but generally speaking, if they like one, they'll like them all. So how to win more awards? First off, create and enter award-worthy work. Look at all your stuff, see what you think is worthy, and enter that. Second, enter similar items in multiple categories. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier. If you have, I used I think a poster before or a magazine ad, but this time I'll use a video. Say you have a TV commercial and you want to enter that TV commercial, and you can enter it as a TV commercial. But you could also enter that TV commercial in cinematography. You can enter that TV commercial in copywriting, maybe art direction. If you have any animation in there, maybe you can enter the animation in that. And again, if it's part of a campaign, you could enter it in a television commercial campaign of up to four, or part of a cross-platform campaign with up to 10 different items. So enter in similar multiple categories. Or if you created something as a magazine ad that was also used as a poster, that was also used as a billboard, you could enter all the different versions of that independently or as a campaign, which is what I just said right here. Enter both as campaigns and individually. So if you have a set of four posters that you like, or four TV commercials that you like, you could pick like the best one and enter that individually. You can take all four, posters. I've seen that in photography, a photography campaign. They have a whole series of photographs, and you might enter all four individually to be judged individually, and then together as a campaign. And as you're really well aware, sometimes, a an individual poster will bring down the campaign. Times it'll bring up the campaign. So you can decide which ones you want to enter individually and which ones you want to enter as a campaign. Um, Enter the elements that make up the ad. I mentioned that just a second ago. Those again are for photography, animation, illustration, logo design, sound design. There's sound design both for just music and no singing, and there's the one that includes words. There's all sorts of things that make up the ad, and don't forget those, because I've seen judges say something like, you know what? They should have entered the music. The music is really good. Or they just entered the music and they didn't enter the whole commercial. So, so look at those things. And again, if you're creating good quality work, enter as many places you can, and you're likely to win more awards. Um, and go from there. I've actually seen best of show winners, and the best of show winner will come to me after the gala and said, you know what, I almost didn't enter that because I didn't even like it. And then it won best of show. So if you think you're in the ballpark, enter it. So again, with the clubs we're working with in this presentation, here are the deadlines. So go ahead and take a look, and you can see when everyone's deadlines are. They're different times. Be sure that you enter on time. I suggest you do it by the first deadline if you can. If you can, everybody has a late deadline. Some people will enforce a late fee with that late deadline. Some people will not. So be careful. I never like to pay more money, so the early one is better. But even if you enter almost everything by the early deadline, and then get the rat fee, if you have a few things you want to enter later, go ahead and do that later. And so you're only paying the late fee if they enforce it on those entries that you put in late. Okay, prices vary per location. See the websites we mentioned earlier for your details. Keep in mind that the prices are different for individual entries and campaign entries. Campaign entries generally cost a few dollars more. If you're in an area with club membership, club members get lower rates. So you may find that your club membership gets totally covered if you're entering enough awards, or if you're submitting enough awards. So, if you save, I don't know, $50 an entry being a club member per award, and you have, you know, three awards that you're entering, that's $150, and that $150 oftentimes covers club membership, which is also good because if you're a member, you'll likely get a discount on the gala. You'll get discounts on other things throughout the year. So, I mean, even if you're not a member, it becomes a financial thing where you're actually saving money by joining and getting the lower rates on the entries, the gala, and everything else throughout the year. There are lower prices for students, so take advantage of that. And other discounts might be available. Sometimes the club will do an early entry discount. There's all sorts of discounts available, and late fees may be effect. So the best thing is to go to those websites we talked about earlier. All that stuff should be outlined in there for you. I don't want to give you information because every club is different. So be sure and look at that. And again, if you have any questions, ask the people. So here are the contact information of all the people in these different areas. And you could contact them about specifically what it is that they're doing it. Oh, I see a typo on Las Vegas. It should be AAF Las Vegas, not Los Angeles. Sorry about that. Um, but if you go to the club website, you'll be fine there. Sorry for the typo. Um, anyway, so there you go. And these are your first people. And generally speaking, whenever these people don't have an answer to your question, they contact me. I sit on the national committee, and I'm much more familiar with um, the rules and the categories. And so, but start with them. And if they're not sure, they'll come to me and I'll help them out and make sure that you're in the right place. Our goal is not to disqualify you. Our goal is to get you entered in their well. One thing I didn't put in here, let's talk a little bit about disqualifications. I really hate disqualifying people. I do not like it. Technically, according to the rules, we can disqualify you if you make a mistake and keep all your money. But most of us are not like that. We just like to fix things and move forward. Um, so, as I mentioned earlier, if you enter in the wrong category, you will not be disqualified. We will just move you to the correct category. Um, the one thing that we do, you need to enter in the correct competition where your agency is or where the work was created, which is kind of an intellectual thing more than a physical thing. Um, you need to enter in the right place. Uh, so if we see that you entered in the wrong place, what we'll probably do is just transfer your entry to the correct competition where you belong. There might be a difference in entry fees one way or the other. So if you're due a refund, they will figure that out. If you owe more money, we'll figure that out. But we'll just transfer it. We need to make sure that the entry was done in the correct year. So for example, your entries for this year should be work that was created and appeared in the media. That's the keyword, and appeared in the media or distributed or used in some way in 2024 between January 1st and January 31st, or excuse me, and December 31st, January 1st to December 31st, 2024. If you created it, for example, in December of 2024, but you did not release it, as in put it in the mail, post it on a website, have a commercial play somewhere, whatever it is, until January, then you have to enter it next year. So this is only for the stuff that was actually used in the competition year, January 1st through December 31st, 2024. Now, that creates a situation just that you might say, well, hey, how come I've seen this one and at the gala and how did it win? It seems like it's the wrong year. There are some things, for example, like something, an annual report as an example, where a company might release their 2023 annual report at the beginning of 2024. And that was fine because it was released in 2024. And they may have released their 2024 annual report in December of 2024. They got done a little bit earlier, and so they sent it out. So it's possible you could have something that looks for 2 different years, but it was created and distributed in the correct year. So basically, one of the things you have to do is sign off that you did that correctly. Normally, most people do not go back and double check this, but if somebody raises a question about this, then we will look into it and make sure that you entered in the correct year. Copyright is very important. Let's talk about copyright for a second, because I have disqualified people for copyright infringement. Students, first off, you are allowed to infringe copyright. You are allowed because your stuff was never printed, produced, it was not used in the public, it was created for a class, this competition, whatever was done. You can use somebody else's logo, somebody else's music. You're learning, it's okay, don't worry about it. You, on the other hand, as professionals, that you need to make sure you follow copyright. Um, if Which means if you decide to have in your commercial something from the Beatles, you better darn well have licensed that Beatle music. If you use a photo from something, you better have licensed that photo, if it's in fact licensable. I mean, some things are in the public domain. So if it's in the public domain, you're fine. But as a professional, you need to make sure that you follow copyright. And I find this specifically in the smaller competitions, where people don't really understand and they'll violate copyright because they think they could just use the music. And but no, I really look at that and I want you to respect the people's copyright with that. So that's something that could get you disqualified. So there's not a lot. Follow the rules. Uh, just let us know, and we want to see you in there. We want to see people win. We want to see people move on and gone. Oh, look, I found another type. I really need to be more careful here. Addie's does not have 3Ds in San Diego. It's 2Ds. Maybe we should have someone look at my work because I will not win the Addie for this presentation. Anyways, um, so there you go. If you have any questions on any of these things, I will be happy to take them. And let me actually, oops, sorry. I think I did not want to do that. But anyway, sorry about that. So we're going to now look at the questions that we have here. Uh, Says for a presentation with multiple pages, would the correct way to submit them be as individual PDFs per page? No. Please go ahead. Oscar, I see you raising your hand. Just go ahead and type in your question, please. So that would be best. No, so if you have a presentation with multiple pages, then go ahead and do one PDF that includes all 57 pages or however many there are. Another one is if you are submitting a magazine, what category would that fall under for a client that is part of the county? So I assume you're meaning, for example, uh, you have a client who might be a local district attorney, a sheriff's office. I've seen these things. I've seen it for parks departments. I've seen it for all sorts of things. A magazine, I'm going to pull out my piece of paper here that has these things, and I can answer that question for you. And if anyone else has any questions, please go ahead and ask. So typically a county would not be public service. Let me talk about public service for a second. Public service would be something that talks about something that benefits the public, such as, and you may have done this for a city or county, and it's about conserving water. So water conservation is a public service, as opposed to a nonprofit. Not all nonprofits are public service. But in the government ones, you would just enter it in the regular category. Um, if you're unsure, run that by your local person, see what their question is. But magazine, yeah, you said magazine categories are under publication design category 8C or 8D, depending if it's a series or just one. If it's more of we're going to help you to, save water, that type of thing, then you might go into public service, which that would be in the print, which would be categories 80A or 80B. As opposed to, let me point this out, customer or corporate social responsibility. Um, that would be, say, your um, Pond's soap, and you decided that you want to create something that it's pushing, something in society that you want to see better as a corporation. That would be corporate social responsibility. Oscar, thank you for typing in. Is there a preference in dimensions for entries such as a presentation showing a print campaign? Um, we do not have a preference in dimensions. Um, hold on. I'm not sure if the second one is, should the entry have a category on it? I'm not sure. Can you clarify that question? Should the entry have a cat? I'm not sure what you mean there, Oscar. Is there preference in dimensions for the entries? No, there's not a preference in dimensions. Keep in mind that the judges will be looking on their own computers. I assume some or all may have laptops, some or all may be looking at desktops, some or all might be looking at some very large screens, some might be looking at smaller screens. So you do what you think is best. I told you that was my generic answer. And that's what I is. Oh, shouldn't you have a category? No, don't put the category on there. Your entry should just be your entry. Don't put the category, don't put the client name, your name, anybody's name. Also, and let me bring this up. Do not put in there the results. This is not a results-oriented category. So if you create a video for something that talks about it, and then you talk about all the great PR that you got or how many hits you got, I tell judges to ignore that. Um, and because, this is a creative competition, not a results-oriented competition. And as I'm sure you're all aware, there's some really bad ads that have some really great results. And we're not honoring those. We're honoring great entries. So you don't need to have the category on it because when you enter it, you're putting in the category online, and that's how we'll find it. Is there anyone else who might have any other questions? Okay. If there you go, I got my screen back up. If there's no other questions, thank you all for coming. And um, if you have any more questions after this, feel free to go ahead and contact your local person. Thank you so much, and we appreciate you coming out. And have a good day, everybody.